I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rafe Mair, former BC Cabinet Minister and Lions Bay, BC's most prominent political commentator. Rafe, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's always good to be here, Jim.
I'm impressed that Prime Minister Trudeau has now followed through on 4 promises, and he hasn't been Prime Minister for a week yet. He stopped the community mailboxes. He said refugees would get their medical benefits back. He said he'd have a cabinet that was gender balanced. Today, they formed a committee to make sure he can follow up on his promise to get 25,000 Syrian refugees inside of Canada before the end of the year. This is a man who seems like he is bent.
Well, he's got off to a flying start. There's no question about that, Jim, and I'm very impressed with what he's done. Now, of course, I've been around long enough to see flying starts before and see things not go so well later on once the opposition gets themselves regrouped. But no, he's done very well, and I think that people are generally impressed from all over the political spectrum. The question I ask myself, though, the gender equality is a good idea. I mean, who wouldn't support that in their right mind? What do you do when one woman resigns? Are you allowed to replace her by a man, or, does it have to stay that way exactly? I just wonder if he's getting himself into some problems down the road.
Well, somebody said he could always have more women than men, and that would reflect the population. Women.
It would. It would. Yeah. Well, I really have no trouble with it whatsoever, and as far as having the Minister of Justice, I think Bill Wilson's daughter, the Minister of Justice. I know that she's a very able person, but the symbology in that, particularly for this part of the world, is enormous, and that was a great move.
Well, when her father was testifying on hearings involving Aboriginals before Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he said, can you make things easier for my 2 daughters because they want to become Prime Minister? And he says, okay, I'll wait around long enough for them to show up.
Well, it's interesting to see the progression in the Trudeau family with respect to Aboriginals. Pierre Trudeau, and this is certainly back when I knew him, was lukewarm at the very best about Aboriginal rights and took really no steps to do anything one way or the other until the Calder case went to the Supreme Court of Canada, and it split 3-3 with one judge sailing off into Never Never Land, and he read that judgment, and it changed his mind completely, and within, I would say, hours, he was turning around, he was making provisions to start recognizing Aboriginal claims and looking at the Constitution and so on. So it's interesting that his son is the one now who finally sort of built on that dream and appointed, there were 2 Aboriginals to cabinet, and it's quite a feather in his cap.
Well, yes, Hunter Tutu is the cousin of Jordan Tutu, the NHL hockey player.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of fisheries, oceans, and the Coast Guard. I know those are ministries that you're pretty interested in. And do you think somebody like him who grew up in that kind of surrounding where the water, the land, the animals are so important to your life, not just your culture?
Well, I've watched that with great hope and great interest. As a matter of fact, I was trying to do a little bit of research on him today, but didn't quite get much done. But to think of what we've had in the past, Jim, going right back to 1871, with 1 or 2 exceptions, we've had Eastern fisheries ministers who not only didn't give a damn about the fishery out here, didn't know anything about it, it was a political pain in the ass to them, because there was never any good news on the fisheries, so therefore they just didn't do anything. Now, John Fraser, of course, was an obvious exception to that, and so was Jack Davis, but they were BC guys. Now, this man, Tutu, I think we have every reason to believe that he is going to, first of all, know what a salmon looks like, and he's going to have some real concerns about the issues that we all have concerns with. You know, I asked our last MP here if he could name the 7 Pacific salmon, and I even said, oh, never mind the 7, I'll forget about the cutthroat trout and the rainbow. Can you name the 5 commercial species? And he couldn't even get started. And, you know, he was sort of joking with me, oh, I don't know all those things. But my God, you're a MP from the coast. You're supposed to know those things. And I think that we're going to see quite a change in Tutu, and we're all going to become much more aware of this tremendous asset we have. It symbolizes British Columbia. They are sacred, and I think we're now going to finally get somebody who sees that and acknowledges it.
Well, I really like our defense minister, Harjit Singh Satjan. Now, he's a veteran. He's been wounded. He's been decorated. He did 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Bosnia. And then, because, life wasn't exciting enough for him, he joins the Vancouver police and ends up in the gang squad.
Well, my comment on Facebook and on Twitter is I wonder if he'll be welcome in the Legion on Remembrance Day.
How wicked they're, Rafe, and how accurate.
I am just delighted. I mean, everybody wants to see a balance of various different societies and so on, but he just looks to me like the kind of guy we've needed in a cabinet in a senior position for a long time. I don't think he is going to take any crap from anybody. I think he's going to be a very strong minister. Now, we've all been wrong on these things before, Jim, but he just stuck out for me when I saw him. And I thought, here's a guy, not only has he got all the credentials, he's obviously got a sense of humor as well, which if you don't have that in politics, you're in trouble.
Well, for people in conflict, I think Brits, Canadians, Americans always had a great sense of humor, and that was one of the ways we coped, through the Great Wars, is somehow somebody could make a joke out of the most grim situation. And you can see he's got that smile in his eyes. That
I'm really looking forward to seeing him in action.
And he has seen action. That's the most important thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Jody Wilson-Raybould as Attorney General and Justice Minister. I think finally we will have that inquiry into the missing Aboriginal women.
Well, as a matter of fact, I just wrote a letter today to one of the local First Nations that are really upset about this. I think, frankly, Jim, this covers a lot of ground. This is probably the most disgusting thing that I've seen in my long life and in many, many years in politics. This is a no-brainer to do because it ought to be done, and it ought to have been done a long time ago. This is not something you do because it's politically correct, etc. This is a very, very serious social problem, a personal problem for a lot of families, for a lot of communities, and so on. And for our governments to have ignored that, I think, I just don't remember anything quite so heartless. It isn't as if anybody's asking you to spend $100 million or something on it. This is not that kind of a thing. It's going to take just some sound investigation. Should have been done at the beginning.
Well, the federal attitude towards the missing women and the Highway of Tears was the same as the Vancouver police's attitude was towards the missing women in the downtown east side. I would go to the police briefing and ask, what are you going to do about the serial killer working the downtown east side? A woman a month disappears, and the police said, no body, no crime.
Oh. Well, and then we had the former conservative leader in British Columbia saying, in essence, that many of them brought it on themselves. And this is the sort of attitude of the past that somehow we're having a lot of trouble erasing these days. Women don't ask for it. And you see a hitchhiker on the road. If that hitchhiker had enough money to drive a Cadillac, he or she be driving a Cadillac. They're there because that's the cheapest form of transportation. I don't know about you, but it's the only way I got around when I was a kid. And to start blaming the victim is just so heartless, and I think it has slowed down the investigation because a lot of people have in government mentally used that as an excuse. As I say, I get very upset about this. I get very worked up because having been in politics, it really is a no-brainer in this. I don't mean that in the sense of it being something you must do politically. It's a no-brainer in the sense that this is what government's all about, is solving these kind of problems, helping communities, helping families, and so on, and finding out about what is a situation that is inexplicable, and you've got to find out what the explanation is. And I just, well, I'd like to say I'm just horrified that it's taken so long.
Well, I remember 2 years ago they had that campaign where Aboriginal women would get a picture taken with them holding a sign, "Will I be next?" And there was no reaction to that. I thought, how heartless.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that in us, you know. We've come a long way, certainly in the last 20, 25 years, but we've got a long way to go.
We'll have more with Rafe Mair right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rafe Mair. Mark Garneau, former astronaut, our transport minister. Now, there is a guy who has an outerly world view on things. He's seen us from the top down, literally. And I thought, being the transportation minister may not be rocket science, but you got a rocket scientist anyway.
You know what horrified me? I couldn't believe he's, I think, 66 years of age. I must be 100. Seemed to me he should be about, well, maybe touching 40 now. You know, it's how time goes. No, he's interesting. He's had a long political career too, and so far a very respectable one.
Carla Qualthrough or Qualtrough, I don't know how to pronounce her name, and I apologize. She's from Delta. She's a visually impaired woman. She's won 3 medals in the Paralympics in swimming.
Yep.
And she's a lawyer. She's represented all kinds of people. And I thought, again, here's another breakthrough. She knows how hard it is to be an Olympic style athlete and to put that kind of training in with the minimal amount of support the Canadian government gives you. And for her to be in charge of sports and for people with disabilities, what a placement there. And again, this isn't just because of her condition or conditions. You know, she's a very educated person and very motivated.
Well, it's very nice if you can get the combination of a lot of talent, which she obviously has, plus the symbology that goes with her and her accomplishments. I'm delighted to see, first of all, a combination of the ministries, you know, in not just sport but disabilities and so on. But secondly, I'm glad to see that given a higher profile, Jim. Before it's been kind of a throwaway. What are we going to give Charlie? Well, we'll give him sports. He can't get us into too much trouble there. Well, this is one that's I don't think it's one of the top, say, 4 or 5, but it's a top-notch portfolio. Requires a person with a great deal of skill, and if she does her job well, I think she probably will. It'll show, and people will be much the better off for it. I'm glad to see, as I say, that ministry has now taken a position that it deserves.
Stephane Dion,
Oh,
former Liberal leader, now Minister of Foreign Affairs. Is he a good placement?
well, I'm just delighted. I happen to know Stephane fairly well, and I might say he owes me a couple of tickets to a Montreal Canadiens hockey game. I haven't got back there yet, but he promised he'd take me, being an old Habs fan. That's me, not him. I think he is too, probably. He is a thoroughgoing gentleman. He had a bad time being a Liberal leader. He was totally ill-suited for that, and that happens to people. You know, you think that you can do it, and other people tell you can do it. Turns out it's just not your bag, and that isn't. But he's done great service to Canada. You know, he started out as a separatist. He's turned around as a sovereigntist, and he's turned around now, and he's become a dedicated nationalist. He is the one that got the Supreme Court of Canada to come in with the formula for a vote, etc. What do they call that law? I forget the name of it now. In any event,
Weighted vote, I think.
Yeah, well, no, it's the open air or something.
Oh.
Or something like that. In any event, he brought that in. He's a very decent sort of a guy. I'm surprised he's in politics because I don't know that he's got the thick skin that is necessary. But he's a thoroughly decent, talented guy, and I'm glad to see he's got not only a portfolio but a senior one like that.
Scott Brison, president of the Treasury Board. He has a real deep thing going back in business. He started an appliance renting business when he was a student. His nickname at Dalhousie University was Fridge Magnate. and also he's been appointed to the committee that's going to try to get all the refugees in before the end of the year to make sure that they have the finance and resources to do it.
Well, he's been around a long time for a guy his age. I think he's under 50, and he's got some Churchill in him in that he's crossed the floor. He was once a conservative.
Progressive conservative.
Progressive conservative, that's right. And that's a distinction that I think you're right to make. But he's had a long, pretty good history, and I think he's going to be probably one of the highlights. It's good to have people that have that kind of experience because of what he's doing with refugees, Jim. That is more than just the technical thing of what you would expect that would come with that ministry. You've got an awful lot of people you've got to keep happy and keep quiet, particularly in your own party, who are not going to like this and not, I don't want them here. Well, yeah, we think they should come to Canada, but not in my backyard, that kind of thing. He's got to solve all of that within the party and keep them happy and still get the job done. And that takes a man who's had a lot of experience in Parliament. He's been there since the 90s, so he knows what he's doing.
Well, considering a lot of the people in the cabinet were not born in Canada, I think they understand what it's like to move to a new country where their culture, their ceremonies, their languages are different.
Well, they're better off than I am, or the same as I am. I'm a second-class citizen along with them, so I know, geez, that's an awful
Well, I was going to say, are they going to change that?
Well, I certainly hope so, Jim. I know people kind of laugh at it, but it smarts. It really and truly smarts. I can imagine what it feels like for somebody who's made the effort to come to Canada, pulling up stakes in your native country and moving to a new country, new language, all the rest of it, with your wife or husband and kids. That's a major, major move to get here, go through all the hoops, learn all about the country, become a good citizen, get involved in community affairs, and suddenly find you're a second-class citizen, and you can be deported, presumably under Harper, if you walk down the street with a sign protesting LNG plants. That's an awful thing. And it's bad enough for people like me who are a sixth-generation Canadian to have that kind of an appellation. But, I hope we're going to see the end of all of that crap. I really do. And
well, one of Canada's best-known actors, Donald Sutherland, said he always kept his Canadian citizenship because he always thought of himself as a Canadian. He could have become an American any day he wanted to, but he was told in the last election, because you don't have a permanent residence in Canada, you cannot vote.
Well, I just don't know where we've come or how we've come to this point. We talked about this before, Jim, and I think Canada was moving far too quickly to a position of being really a nasty place in lots of ways, and that's not us. That's not the way we are. We bicker a lot amongst ourselves, and we've had fights with French Canadians in Ontario and all kinds of things like that, internal wars, and Rafe Mair hating the Toronto Maple Leafs, all that stuff. But basically, we're a decent population that is tolerant of other people, doesn't necessarily like all the things that happen with immigration. Now, there's nothing new about that, but we tolerate, we understand, and we're decent, and we try to help out. And I think we talked about this before. I remain convinced that Harper lost this election, at least in large part because of the niqab issue, not because people were suddenly jumping up and down to defend Muslims, but people were saying, wait a minute, that's not us. I'm not very fussy about what's going on in the Middle East and ISIS and all the rest of it, but we don't do that to people. If people want to wear a veil, etc., we don't make a big fuss about it. We may not like it ourselves or wear it ourselves, but we're Canadians. We accept other people. And I hope, and looking at this cabinet, I think there's reason to hope that we're moving back to where we were. And while we don't all love one another, we all accept one another, and we all deal with each other civilly and decently.
Rafe, an international study just found Canada is the world's most tolerant nation. You wouldn't have known it by the former Prime Minister.
No, you wouldn't. And I think we spoke about this last time, and I think we're in danger of moving out of that. That's something I think we should be very proud of, because it's not as if we were all one homogeneous country, that everybody from the very beginning had come from the same place, spoke the same language, was of the same religion, of the same color, and all the rest. And we weren't that at all. Quite the opposite of that. And yet we have, and I think I gave you a little sort of recitation of my own life, going back to wartime, where we put Japanese kids in my school in the concentration camps, where we boycotted bakeries because we thought they were German when they were Dutch. We called people that were black and yellow and so on by the terrible names that they were known by. And we've come from there through to the point where we have become, I think, a civil society and recognized as a civil society. Now, that surely is something to be proud of, because, as I say, a lot of us went all the way from a very, very bigoted society. Our parents are bigoted. All the people that they knew were bigoted. We came from there right to the point where we're now getting an international recognition for being a decent civil nation. Surely that's something not only to be proud of, but to make sure we hang on to and improve upon.
Yes, and I don't think Canada could be called a chicken shit nation if we decide we don't want to be warmongers anymore and want to put those blue helmets back on and be UN peacekeepers, because nobody does that job better than Canadians.
Well, that's
I think because we're
absolutely
tolerant.
right. I don't know whether it was you or somebody else I was talking to about this. Why on earth would we give up something that we were internationally recognized for being the best there was? It's not as if it's a chicken shit, as you say, operation. It's not as if you're not likely to get killed or hurt or, that sort of thing. It's a very dangerous occupation. It's not that at all. It's one that we came to be very good at. I don't know whether it started before Lester Pearson and Suez and Cyprus and so on, but it's certainly been going on for 40, 50 years. And why on earth you would suddenly give that up and then tie your wagon to the United States? And I'm not anti-American, as you know, but why you would tie your decision-making to something that the President and the White House from time to time wants to do, when you had a role that was independent of the causes of war, but very dependent upon keeping the peace once it was established? It doesn't make any sense for us to get out of that. And I hope Mr. Trudeau brings us back into that area and lets us do what we do best.
Rafe, anything else you want to add about what you hope this government can do? Like I said, they're following up on promises at a terrific rate. I think, maybe after 4 years we'll give them another nod. But again, like you said, a lot of things can change. It just takes one scandal.
Well, I just remember
or 10.
Harold Wilson in the United Kingdom saying, in politics, 6 weeks is an eternity. And you just don't know what's going to happen. What you do know is the honeymoon won't last forever, either in politics or in real life. And there are going to be rough spots coming, and he's not going to be as popular as he once was. But so far, what I see, I think he's a guy that can stick with it. He's made the right moves. I think the most important thing is this probably. He commands loyalty. Look how he won his last election. I think Canadians have every right to be hopeful. Having said that, God only knows what's going to happen in the next year or two, or 3 or 4.
I know Justin will drive his security people crazy.
Oh, sure.
You saw it at the swearing-in ceremony. He's jumping into the crowd, taking selfies with people. I think he enjoys being Canadian and has found himself at the top of a country who really likes him right now.
Well, as you probably know, I'm a great Winston Churchill fan. I had an opportunity to write on this recently to say that this is something that Harper didn't learn, is the common touch, nor did he learn the reverence for democracy that Churchill had. But I just remember those pictures, middle of wartime. Half the world wanted to kill him, and he's out there in the midst of all the people that have just been bombed out. They're surrounding him, patting him on the back, holding him, touching him, and he's crying and all the rest of it. He wouldn't have enough security to stop anybody anytime, and he was doing it. Now, I recognize the times are different now, but I give Trudeau marks for saying, wait a minute, I've got to be a person of the people, take those risks, but that's what I am, and that's what I'm going to be.
And I noticed in the last election ads, when they say we can't do this, we can't do that, we're Canadians. We can do anything if we want.
Well, that's a good attitude to have, I think, and I'm very optimistic, but as I say, I know I probably say this too much. I really have been around a long, long time, and I've seen a lot of politicians, including myself. I've seen them all come and go. I've seen the high points and the low points, and it's amazing how quickly the low points can hit you. You don't have to have a whole lot happen wrong to have your whole government, in an uproar. And those things are bound to happen to Mr. Trudeau like they have to everybody else. The trick is going to be to see how he survives them. From what I've seen so far, he's got a maturity that I find very unexpected, but very nice. And I think he's going to handle it fine, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, he's the father of several little kids. I think that makes you grow up pretty fast.
Tell me about it.
Rafe, thanks a lot.
I should just tell you this, because by talking about kids, I have my second great-grandchild is on the way, so there you are.
Yeah, somebody new to spoil.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My guest has been Rafe Mair, former BC cabinet minister, and also Canada's longest-running #1 radio talk show host. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be emailed to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.